I asked you to send me your unpopular MMA takes. I'm going to be reacting to them in this video. Welcome back to another video. If you guys haven't already subscribed, hit the subscribe button, like, comment, and all that. Let me know some of your unpopular MMA opinions, and maybe I'll do a part 2 of this video as well. I was starting off with Andy MB. Arnold Allan gets the decision over Max Holloway. So if you guys have been following the channel for a while, you guys will know that Arnold Allan is one of those guys that I have supported and said, hey, this is a guy that you guys got to look out for. He's a guy that could actually shake up the featherweight division. But I have said before that this is a bad stylistic matchup for Arnold Allan. It's unfortunate because in my opinion, I think that he should have gotten one of those like Josh Emmett type fights or Yair Rodriguez for the interim title. I think he deserved it because of his win streak. Obviously he's injured though now, so I guess he would have had to pull out anyway, but that's what he deserved. And look, this Max Holloway fight is probably the hardest out of the top 5 that he could have gotten, but it is a big opportunity for him. So if he wins, big reward. Of course, obviously he would get a title shot after that, I would assume. So I do disagree, and it is definitely an unpopular opinion. I think most people would definitely go with Max, including myself, but I could also see a possibility where Arnold Allan maybe mixes in the strikes and the takedowns and fight a more smarter fight. But for now, I think I'm gonna go Max Holloway. All right, the next take. The younger generation of lightweights is coming sooner than what people think. Dustin's, Chandler's, Gaethje's, and Oliveira's will soon be out of the picture. Yeah, so honestly, this is a take that I do kind of agree with. You know, when you look at the top of the lightweight division against the top 15, I mean, you could see that I think a lot of those top 15s have so much hype and so much talent that they could actually potentially hang with the top 5 right now. I mean, if you look at guys like Arman Tsarukyan, who gave Islam Makhachev problems. Also a guy like Mateusz Gamrot, who's also very talented. Damir Ismagulov, who is retiring after his next fight, but he's also very talented. And honestly, I think this is the end for Justin Gaethje, in my opinion. I think Justin Gaethje is one of those guys that is now on his way out. Not to totally shit on him, I don't like have hard evidence, I just have that feeling. I have a feeling that Rafael Fiziev is going to retire Justin Gaethje and get Justin Gaethje to be kind of like one of those guys that used to be good. I think the Oliveira and Khabib fight's really exposed. If you push Justin Gaethje backwards, he will crack. And now I think he's like 4-4 in the UFC or something like that. So yeah, I think that I agree. But Dustin Poirier, in my opinion, is one of those guys that could definitely hang with the younger generation still. I think that he could give Arman Tsarukyan problems, Mateusz Gamrot problems, a lot of those guys. A fight between Rafael Fiziev would be very interesting if Rafael Fiziev gets past Justin Gaethje. But it is a pretty bold prediction to say, hey, Dustin and Charles Oliveira might be done, but I agree with Justin Gaethje at least. Diamond Life says, Chito Vera is overrated. Is good at finding finishes and having big moments, but loses everything in between. He was losing a near-retired Frankie, getting outpointed by an old-ass Cruz, let Font land record numbers of strikes on him. Those were younger fighters with less miles on them, but actual power in their strikes, they almost likely would have beaten him. Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned this. Marlon Vera is a guy that I compare to Jorge Masvidal a lot, and I feel like Marlon Vera is specifically going through that like 2019 Masvidal phase right now. I feel like Marlon Vera is just one of those guys that is very vicious in there and has a killer mindset, which really gets him through those fights. I think technically he's not always there, and yes, loses sometimes the majority of the fight, but the guy could scrap and the guy has heart. So I get what you're trying to say. Like, I get saying he's good, but to say that like, oh, that he's beating all these guys, he's not really doing it dominantly, and there is a lot of question marks when it comes to Marlon Vera. Having a belt is more of a matter of luck and politics than any real measure of the best of the world. Robert Whittaker has been the best middleweight in the world after 2, arguably 1 loss to Adesanya, even though he got arguably the worst title reign ever. Rob beat everyone Izzy beat more decisively and is so much better than everyone, including Pereira in the world of middleweight. You know, I 100% agree. I don't think this is a very unpopular opinion. You know, it's like, how talented are you? You might be extremely talented, like Robert Whittaker is, but there might be just that one guy that could beat you, like Israel Adesanya, and then all of a sudden you can't be the champion, even though, like you've said, arguably he has beaten everybody more decisively. You watch that Marvin Vettori fight, you know, Marvin Vettori took Adesanya to a split decision one time, and if that fight would have went to the 4th and 5th rounds, we might have seen Robert Whittaker finish Marvin Vettori. He looked like he was really hurting Marvin Vettori with those head kicks. So it's 100% more about timing and everything like that. There's guys like Dustin Poirier, in my opinion, that could have been the lightweight champion, but just couldn't beat the 2 guys, Oliveira and Khabib. Sometimes you're just gonna run into bad stylistic matchups. It really plays into who's a champion, when it is. Obviously injuries have things to play with that too. There's a lot of contributing factors. It's not just like, oh, you're the best, okay, you're going to be the champion, specifically when it comes to the UFC. Jon Jones' resume is filled with a lot of low-skilled fighters, bearing the likes of maybe DC and Machida. How many Jon Jones wins could you say have the skill level to be ranked in the divisions like 155 or 135? Honestly, as a person that constantly says Jon Jones is the greatest of all time, I have to incredibly disagree with you there. First of all, there's a lot of things. Saying Jon Jones fought a lot of low-skilled fighters is just false. You could bring up Alexander Gustafsson, DC, as you mentioned, Lyoto Machida, beat Shogun, and to put maybe question mark that DC or Lyoto Machida were high level, they are high level. Also, Rashad Evans, Rampage Jackson. I mean, just think about the people that Jon Jones has beaten. He's beaten a lot of high level guys, and I don't know if you're a new fan, I don't want to assume, but if you are, I would seriously suggest watching some of Jon Jones's older fights, or try to watch like as many old light heavyweight fights as you can, so you can actually understand how good Rampage and how good Shogun and Machida and all of those guys were. I know Jon Jones hasn't fought in 3 years, and it's easy to forget when so many things has happened since then. Jon Jones is is a high-level guy. All right, next one. Former champions like Izzy and Usman do not deserve to get automatic rematches. So let's break this down. So for Kamaru Usman, I want to start with him. I disagree. I think he deserves a rematch. I mean, you saw his finishes. You know, he finished Jorge Masvidal, Gilbert Burns. He had 2 wars with Colby Covington. The guy's legacy is cemented, in my opinion, when you're talking about welterweight UFC history. I think he deserves a rematch. You know, he had enough title defenses. He was pretty dominant. People were talking, is this the greatest of all time? Is this the greatest welterweight of all time? A lot of talk, a lot of hype when it came to Kamaru Usman, and he was dominating that whole fight. I thought he won round 1. A lot of people say Leon won round 1, but okay, either way, then he won 3 rounds. When it comes to Adesanya, I could see your point, because like Adesanya has lost to Pereira now 2 times. I wouldn't mind maybe making like some sort of interim title fight, having Pereira fight Jamal Hill in the meantime, have Adesanya fight someone, maybe even Whitaker for a 3rd time, because a lot of people say that 2nd fight was controversial, and then the winner of that fight's Alex Pereira. It does feel a little weird because like Pereira has beaten Adesanya now 3 times, and it's also just risky because like if Adesanya loses, then where do you go from here? Like, does Pereira just leave, Adesanya gets slid into a vacant title fight, and then all of a sudden he's the champ again, and we're supposed to forget that Alex Pereira beat him twice? I think honestly Alex should just move up. Obviously that's up to Alex, but ideally you would want Alex to move up and maybe just have a vacant title fight. I think the story with Alex is over. I think Alex is going to beat Izzy in the rematch, but we're gonna have to see with that. But I can see your point with Izzy, but Kamaru I think definitely deserves a rematch. Any athletic woman with a modicum of heart can make it in the UFC. This is a conception that I think is going to start going away. The women's division in the UFC, in my opinion, was for a long time very much lacking, and I think specifically the bantamweight division is a division that's really bad right now. But strawweight gets slept on so much. I mean, you have Rose Namajunas, Shang Wei Li, Mackenzie Dern. I mean, those are all high-level girls, and they range from the top. A lot of well-known girls that are in that division. And the flyweight division is something that is slept on, in my opinion, but I think will get big. I think in a year, people will start respecting the flyweight division because we have a lot of people coming up. Talia Santos, Erin Blanchfield, which is supposed to be the main event now for February 25th. That fight I'm excited for. That's a very high-level fight. Talia Santos obviously coming off of that close fight with Valentina Shevchenko. Obviously, Erin Blanchfield coming off the dominant win of Molly McCann. There's a lot of hype for that fight, in my opinion. Those are 2 high-level flyweights that actually have stakes, so I actually don't mind that main event, especially now that's in the Apex and they moved that Corey Sandhagen fight, San Antonio. But the bantamweight division is suffering. Like, there's look at the contenders that we have coming up. Irene Aldana, Raquel Pennington, and it hurts when there's such like a dominant champion. Like Valentina Shevchenko, we've seen her cracks lately. That's why the division is getting a little bit better, because now there's stakes in every fight. Like, can this person beat Valentina Shevchenko? Well, with Amanda Nunes, there's really no stakes. But I think the bantamweight division is another one that I think in a few years will take time to build up. There was a time where the women's bantamweight division was a good division, but as of right now, it's just not there anymore. I do think a lot of people kind of sleep on the women's division as like, all these women are bad, and yes, some of the divisions, like especially the bantamweight division, and for a while the flyweight division was a little bit of a drag, but I think the flyweight division is really giving me hope to say that women's MMA in the UFC is really good. Now, women's MMA and like PFL and other organizations is really good, but for some reason the UFC is just lacking. Knees to the head of a grounded opponent should be legal in the UFC. I would say no. You know, call me maybe soft or whatever you want to say, but those are seriously damaging. And I mean, look, at the end of the day, we're talking about serious ground and pound, and I guess really what's the difference between constant elbows to the face, or someone like Glover Teixeira recently getting battered across 5 rounds? Like, what's the difference between that and a knee to the head? We saw it with DJ, he got knocked out with that. But regardless of my opinion, this isn't really a UFC thing. We see ONE do this because they're not in America. They're making their American debut, I think, in Colorado because of this rule. But this is a state issue. It's the states that decide, hey, this is not cool. The state, the athletic commission, they all decide these factors, and it's not really up to the UFC unless they want to go overseas to do these things. But obviously, I think it's a lot easier to have one rule set across everything, so it doesn't really get too confusing for the fighters. But that is going to conclude my video, my MMA takes. Let me know, did you agree with any of my opinions? What are some of your unpopular MMA takes? If this does well, I'll do a part 2 next week. Thank you guys for watching. Hit the subscribe button, like, comment, and all that, and I'll see you guys in the next one.